Welcome to episode 24 of the SWNZ Podcast, the podcast for New Zealand Star Wars fans. My name is Matt.
And my name is Christy.
Today is May the 14th. Last week we spent a lot of time talking about Star Wars Day, which took place just prior to our previous podcast. But one thing we didn't really reflect on again last week was the fact that there were actually no announcements, new videos, or even behind-the-scenes information from official channels that came out on May the 4th. That was a little bit disappointing. It was a good opportunity. We talked about how it was a good opportunity a couple of podcasts back. But I guess it was just a little bit of an interesting thing to note at this point that we didn't hear anything from official channels. Having said that, there's a lot of information that seems to be coming out from unofficial channels because both the Andor and Obi-Wan Kenobi series are filming right now. We'll talk about that just a little bit. We're not going to go into any spoilers here, so don't worry too much if you're trying to stay free of spoilers. If you want to search for spoilers, there are some online because some of this filming has been taking place in public areas, which is kind of interesting, and that's an opportunity for people to take spy photos and even footage. It is out there if you want to go looking for it. But as I say, both the Andor series and Obi-Wan Kenobi series are filming right now, and also the Book of Boba Fett is presumably coming up on a finish if it hasn't already finished, because The Mandalorian Season 3 is slated to start filming immediately after the Boba Fett series concludes. So it's interesting that there has been leaked Andor footage and pics from the filming, which is taking place in Cleveleys in Lancashire in England. I won't go into details like I say, but if you want to hunt them down, they're fun. There are some costumes that you may recognise, and there's even clips and pics that show Cassian Andor himself. It's quite interesting that that information's out there now.
Considering how sort of leaked, sort of closed down things like The Mandalorian has been, it's interesting that they are choosing to just shoot in open areas, particularly with their ability to use the volume where they can keep a completely secretive closed set. I guess there are just some locations that just don't read well in a digital space, whether they need a natural environment, grass, trees, water, something like that, I guess, that necessitates filming outside. Yeah,
Andor actually seems to be using a lot of locations because the one I just mentioned in Lancashire is actually just one of many. So they're actually moving around in locations rather than on set. I wonder how that will actually translate to the appearance on film. I wonder if it will feel different from the series that have been relying heavily on recording in the volume with digital backgrounds.
It could be that they want to match the look and feel of Rogue One more closely.
True.
It'll be interesting to see, obviously, with the Disney Plus series of The Mandalorian and then all these other new projects coming out after. It'll be interesting to see how different in look and style each different series will be. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the volume sort of digital film set for the Mandalorian series has worked really well for those stories that tend to feature smaller groups of people, I guess. We haven't sort of seen huge, big areas. I think Navarro is probably the biggest collection of people that we see, sort of in a townscape that we would normally see done in a full scale set out in a location shooting. So I'm really keen, obviously, to see some official trailers or promotional images for these new series, just to kind of get us really amped up. I mean, I'm sure all of us are very excited to see what the next lineup after The Mandalorian is. But I just want to sort of get a taste of what sort of style and direction they're going to take these ones.
I really want to see official material as well, but at least there's enough information out there now to get the feel that it's taking place.
Yeah.
That it's not just at the paperwork level.
We've had so many announcements of things. You know, they're announcing a new series, announcing a new movie, and then you kind of have this pause where you just want to know, is it going ahead? You know, because Disney's obviously had to pivot, so a lot of their initial movie plans have been put on hold or cancelled, and now we've got other things, and we just sort of want to see something concrete, something to sort of go, yes, we can get excited about this because it is going to happen.
It's a little bit funny. I mean, today, this podcast comes out on Fridays. Fridays is the evening for the Bad Batch in New Zealand. We're kind of at this point where the chasm of 1 week between Star Wars material is almost too much, which is, I mean, it's going to be an interesting, I mean, I hate the periods between the series. It's going to be interesting that at some point in the not too distant future, we're actually going to have more than one doses of Star Wars per week, and that's something that I look forward to. So yeah, just talking about Andor taking place, filming over in the UK. Also talking about films series that are filming right now. We saw Ewan McGregor on Jimmy Kimmel. He was talking to Jimmy Kimmel about his Netflix series Halston, but of course the topic of Star Wars came up. He was actually calling in to the show from the Obi-Wan Kenobi set, from a green room or similar there. So he actually had prequel posters behind him quite prominently when he was having that conversation. He, of course, was very tight-lipped about anything that could be even vaguely spoilery, but it was an interesting conversation. One little bit of trivia that he did give away was that on May the 4th, the filming that he was doing on that day, on Star Wars Day, he described as being with someone very special in his life. And I believe he said that he's not necessarily related to them and hasn't been on screen with them before. It doesn't tell us much, but it's something interesting to speculate on.
Yeah, it's sort of a cryptic little teaser. Obviously, he's wanting to, on a Star Wars set on Star Wars Day, they would, maybe possibly arrange so that they were filming a significant scene or scenes on those day, so that they could, maybe the making of, behind the scenes stuff, they can say, on Star Wars Day, we filmed this scene. But yeah, it's obviously not really enough to even sort of try and deduce who or what character or actor he is referring to here.
It was very much non-information.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see him, and I get the strong feeling that he's heavily invested in this series, which is no surprise at all. Almost wouldn't be surprised if he has an executive producer credit just because of his investment in the character in general and his long-standing relationship with Lucasfilm. But yeah, obviously he's very respectful of the need for secrecy.
And he talked about what it was like getting back into the role after so long. And of course, he had very Obi-Wan in styled hair and beard. So that was a little bit,
Well, that's right. That is information that is kind of useful. He's on the set now, so what he looks like right now, apart from minor styling, is what he'll look like in the series. So
his hair and beard looks very sort of Episode 3 era, like that's sort of taking that on. And he did seem to imply that his costume is a little bit different, because he was asked about what it was like getting back into costume, and he seemed to infer that this one is a slightly different costume than what he has worn before.
Well, what we've seen a lot more in the modern era, we're seeing a lot more practicality with clothing. We're not seeing people wearing the same. I mean, Han Solo through long stretches of time wore the same pants and the same jacket as did everyone else. We didn't see a lot of costume changes in the previous eras, but we are seeing a lot more practicality, and it wouldn't surprise me if he actually has different outfits and different accessories depending on what he's doing for an episode or whatever. I doubt that he's just going to wear the same robes without changing them and washing them.
Yeah, because obviously in Episode 3 we see him in a sort of a standard Jedi tunic. Then when we see Obi-Wan 20 years later, he's got the longer robes. So it'll be interesting to see if the costume designers really try to sort of bridge that gap, or they're going to design something. I know some fans would love to see him in that sort of hermit Obi-Wan that's done in a mythos.
Yeah, nomadic ensembles.
The mythos statue, and there is also a matching 12-inch figure that's kind of like a mashup. Like, he's got some of his Clone Wars armor with him. He's kind of got, like head wrappings and scarves to kind of be in the Tatooine desert and stuff like that. So it'd be interesting to see if they take a little bit of a inspiration from that kind of imagined outfit where he's got bits and pieces from his previous sort of Jedi adventures, or whether they're going to lean a little bit more towards the Alec Guinness look, or just something completely new, because he's not really in the Jedi Order anymore, because that doesn't exist. So it's really exciting, just little snippets just to kind of ponder on and sort of speculate in that. But golly, I really do want to see some official looks at it.
We know that right now there is footage in the can starring Diego Luna, Temuera Morrison, Ewan McGregor. Please give us something soon.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be talking on the topic of those streaming series a lot more, as the year progresses. In other news, just announcement came out yesterday from memory. The Star Wars Celebration Anaheim 2022 dates have been adjusted. Unfortunately, they've been brought forward by 3 months, nearly a full 3 months. So Celebration was due to take place next year in August, mid to late August, but it's been brought forward to May the 26th to the 29th, 2022. This change has meant that ticket holders can actually get a refund for their 2022 tickets if those dates no longer suit them. That has to be done by visiting StarWarsCelebration.com before June the 11th of this year. And if you've got an existing ticket for Star Wars Celebration because you are anticipating it to take place in August, you can keep that ticket. It will be automatically transferred to the new dates, and you can expect to get a confirmation in the coming months. Personally, I think this change in dates is a little unfortunate. I understand that it may be due to Disney/Lucasfilm's desire to separate it from the D23 Expo that takes place in the same convention centre in September, but bringing it closer in time with the whole situation of uncertainty around international travel makes it a little bit of a challenge to commit to for those of us that have to come into the country. It's probably easier for Americans to move around, but those of us in New Zealand in particular have to travel through international airports, and even with vaccine rollouts taking place right now, 12 months almost feels it's just a little bit much uncertainty to really commit to.
I know certainly in Australia, fans have talked about how their government has basically sort of said that international travel is not really going to be an option until mid-2022. And I would imagine that in New Zealand, we're going to have very similar sort of timelines in terms of international travel, because obviously our two countries have been very successful containing the virus and not really wanting to import cases from, especially a large country like the US. It's going to be tricky. If it was somewhere else, that might be a little bit more of a hopeful option. So if you have a ticket, it's going to be a little bit of a hard decision.
You have to make a call before June the 11th, unfortunately, which is only
that's not that far away to really make a big decision. I mean, international travel for most of us is a big deal, but the uncertainty of just travel arrangements.
It was disappointing when Celebration had to be bumped. Well, disappointing, but understandable when Celebration had to be bumped. I thought that August 2022 was almost plausible. I mean, we're talking about it now because we've been to a number of celebrations in the past and they're absolutely fantastic experiences, and we look forward to being able to go to one again at some point in the future. But 2022 is just a little bit shrouded in uncertainty.
Health and safety always comes first.
If you're listening to this podcast on the SWNZ YouTube channel, then you are very likely already subscribed to the SWNZ YouTube channel, but I just wanted to bring it up because we've been moving into a little bit more video coverage of New Zealand collectibles on our YouTube channel. So if you're not already subscribed, head on over. There'll be a link in the description where you can access it from our website, and subscribe for notifications. We're going to be putting out a few more videos on our YouTube channel, showcasing in particular the New Zealand collectibles that we frequently talk about on the SWNZ website. And moving forward, we'll also be looking at such things as conventions and other Star Wars related events that are taking place in New Zealand. Okay, looking forward to Bad Batch screening on Disney Plus tonight. We'll cycle back around and talk about last week's episode very shortly, but let's just wrap up the local store reports that were reported on the SWNZ website. There's been quite a few this week, interestingly. We'll start off by talking about the fact that the official Adidas website has an array of new kids' shoes. There's 3 styles, each with sort of cartoony graphics that'll appeal to kids showing up on the side of them. They come in sizes kids size 4 through to size 7, and the price range for these is $80 through to $180 depending on the style and size. Coming from EB Games, I'm really happy to see the Death Watch Mandalorian Black Series replica helmet. This was revealed in Hasbro's May the 4th announcements. It's a GameStop exclusive in the US, so it's not too surprising that EB Games is getting it locally. The pricing on that is $259, and it's coming into the country on December 2021 with a bit of luck. I quite like this helmet. I understand it's just a repaint of the existing Boba Fett helmet molds, which is a little unfortunate because you can see the battle damage of the original Boba Fett helmet that's been sculpted into the helmet coming through when they do these repaints. But nevertheless, I really like the actual paint job of the Death Watch Mandalorian. And if you're a fan of Mandalorians in general, there's quite a few Mandalorian helmets that you can line up into a cool display, and this colour palette will really stand out. Overnight was the coldest night of the year yet in our region, and that is a sign of change of seasons, and that's reflected in the fact that farmers' department stores now have new Star Wars Kids winter pajamas available, 3 styles at $39.99 each. Check out the pics on the SWNZ website or at your local farmer's store. From May the 4th, Herschel Supply Co., who make bags and have done Star Wars bags before, announced their Mandalorian range. There were 4 styles announced. They can, or at least could, be purchased directly from the New Zealand version of the Herschel Supply Co. official website. The adult styles, two adult styles have actually already sold out. They may be restocked. There are 2 styles aimed at the younger audience that are still available. A very cool pop vinyl Boba Fett figure is coming out in the end of this month, and that's available to pre-order from Mighty Ape or a few other local retailers. I say very cool. It is a vintage colouring version of the Boba Fett figure. I love vintage coloured Boba Fetts. We've been hunting around trying to find out where you can get all of the new action figures that were announced on May the 4th. It's been a little tricky and they're a little bit spread out. Pop Guardian has some and has had some, in particular the vintage collection Off-World Jawa, which will make a great army builder addition to your Razor Crest if you happen to have one of those on order. That's available at Pop Guardian now for $30. If you use the code SWNZ5 at checkout, you get a 5% discount on Star Wars products from Pop Guardian. We're looking to see if we can spot a retailer for the 50th anniversary TVC figures. That includes the likes of the Tusken Raider, the Death Star Droid, and the Endor Luke. Xavi in Australia did have those, but because they're exclusives, they're sold out pretty quick. Hopefully someone else in New Zealand will pick them up, but we don't have anyone to report on just yet, so sorry that that's negative news, but we will be keeping an eye out to see if anyone locally stores those, because I quite like the Tusken Raider and the Death Star Droid in particular. But talking about exclusive action figures from Hasbro, the exclusive Black Series figures have shown up at EB Games. This range includes the Vice Admiral Rampart from the Bad Batch 6-inch action figure at $49. Also from the Bad Batch, the Black Series Imperial Shock Trooper 6-inch action figure at $49. And a couple of Gaming Greats figures, Jedi Fallen Order Flame Trooper and Jedi Fallen Order Night Brother Warrior, both priced at $59 each at EB Games.
These prices are a little higher than the standard Black Series figure. It's kind of a shame to see these things kind of creeping upwards in price, but at least we are getting them stocked locally. These are probably prices closer to what you would be paying to import them, but at least you can go in and see them for yourself and check out the paint and the box condition and that sort of stuff. So kind of wish that these Gaming Greats ones in particular were a little more in line with the standard Black Series figures, but at least we're seeing them in New Zealand.
Yeah, $59 is getting up there. It's pretty close to the price you'd expect for a deluxe figure with the extra accessories and the larger sized box, but that's not the case for these.
Yeah.
For these Gaming Greats figures. Nevertheless, they are available locally, and that's something, I suppose. So, episode 2 of The Bad Batch screened on Disney Plus last Friday. Hopefully everyone that's listening in had a chance to see it. It was a shorter episode, coming in at 30 minutes, which is what we're expecting from here on in. Did enjoy the first episode being a good 75 minutes. That felt like a good chunk of story. The shorter episode left me wanting more. It was a pretty tight plot. Not a lot of movement, to be honest. Good to watch. Always good to watch. Always to see the characters and where it's going. But it felt a little bit more like a Clone Wars episode, and just left me wanting more. I would almost have. I mean, if we're expecting 14 to 16 episodes this season, I don't know if we've got solid clarity on which of those numbers is correct. But I'd almost prefer a shorter season with double-sized or back-to-back episodes per month, just to satiate our hunger for Star Wars material.
So just as a heads up, we'll be talking about some of the plot points in this episode. So go watch it if you haven't seen it. And for those of you that have, we can get stuck into it.
Yeah, the timing now does mean that when our podcasts come out, we're talking about an episode that screened a week ago. But yeah, just do keep that in mind when you get to this point in our podcasts. Episode 2 saw the Bad Batch and Omega arrive on Saleucami to meet with the clone deserter Cut Lorquain, who was actually a returning character from the Clone Wars, but that actually stretches back quite a bit. When we first saw him in the episode called The Deserter, that was actually a Season 2 episode of Star Wars The Clone Wars that screened in January 2010. so more than a decade ago. So interesting to see them returning to that aspect of the Clone Wars.
The Bad Batch catch up with the deserter Cut Lawquane and his partner, the Twi'lek Sue, and who have 2 kids. So they are getting to sort of figure out the way that the Empire is cracking down on the planets and finding that they really do want to escape. Obviously, Cut is a deserter, but he's a recognizable clone, so they know that if they get identified with this heavy Empire presence, they're going to be arrested. So they're going through the sort of process of trying to escape the planet. Kind of reminded me of the sort of opening scenes of Solo, that kind of like desperately trying to get off a planet with the sort of Imperial, almost a sort of a blockade around it. And we also get some neat moments with Omega. This is her first time off Kamino, so she's really sort of finding out different things about the world. We see a sweet moment where she touches dirt for the first moment, a very simple thing, and she's getting to meet other sort of human children and just sort of finding her place within a wider world now that she's out of her very isolated sort of life on Kamino. So the episode talks about sort of chain codes. So they are IDing everybody on the planets and that. And obviously that's going to be an issue for clone troopers and things like that. So we see the Bad Batch kind of helping them out, trying to steal some information so that they can sort of smuggle them off the planet. So it's not a in-depth one. We see a little bit of character progression, but I get the feeling that this is going to be like those early episodes with Ahsoka in the season 7, where we see her on Coruscant, just sort of a little bit of a small progression in the storyline, but important to kind of really get the ball rolling for some of the bigger story arcs later coming along.
Yeah, it was an exposition sort of episode. It was introducing the landscape. It was just laying out the where the Empire is at and what effect it's having on planets and smaller communities and so forth, and introducing this notion of everyone having to have chain code identification and the implications of that. It also gave the opportunity for the Bad Batch to learn more about the chips that all clones have been implanted with, and the fact that the clones might not have had a full say in their actions associated with Order 66.
We also see a moment where Omega's essentially given the choice to stay with Cut and Sue and sort of find a sort of a family to be adopted into, to sort of have a normal childhood and an upbringing, but through the pacing of the story, she wants to stay with the Bad Batch. This is what she feels as her family. So that they sort of set up like, why would a child stay with these soldiers? So they've kind of explained why she's going to tag along with them.
I think that was a necessary plot point to, as you say, literally explain. It might seem a bit odd that a child is tagging along with a hardened group of military experts at this point, but this is hanging a lantern on the fact that it's a little bit odd, but that it's coming from personal desire and everyone's just sort of accepting it. I found the way they portrayed it as the shade odd, because there was a bit of a abrupt jump from the scenes where she was about to get onto the transport to leave the planet with Cut and his family, and they just sort of jumped to her returning to the Bad Batch, but they wrapped it up in the end.
We saw a moment where she takes off the pendant that she's wearing on her forehead that is obviously a Kaminoan sort of symbol, and so I think that kind of symbolizes her sort of putting the past a little bit behind her and joining up with the new clones. Obviously the clones aren't sort of native Kaminoans. They were created on Kamino, that is their home planet, but obviously they are sort of, genetically associated with Jango and humans rather than Kaminoans. So I sort of see that as her really signifying that these clones are her family and sort of putting her sheltered Kaminoan life behind her.
Yeah, so it was an interesting development of the relationship between Omega and the clones, and probably enough to the point where they can just park that aspect of the plot and move on.
We also saw a moment where she picked up a blaster and she doesn't sort of really know how or why she had the skills to do that, which I think poses some interesting questions about Like, how much in their sort of genetic makeup do they have the sort of the skill of a soldier? Like, obviously we know they picked Django for his sort of genetic inherent traits and stuff like that, but she doesn't seem to have been trained like the clones would have been from an early age. I don't know if we've really sort of seen any indication whether she is a sped up clone or whether she will naturally age like Boba. So we're getting just a little bit more information with her. I think she's an interesting character, and I'm really keen to see where they go with her story.
Yeah, so a fairly tight plot all up. Not quite a capsule episode because it did tie into the episode that came before strongly, but it gives us room to just move on from this point and get into slightly more adventurous plots. Looking forward to seeing Fennec Shand at some point in an upcoming episode. And we've had some other little bits of information come out from footage that's been shared about the Bad Batch that we'll hopefully start to be seeing from tonight onwards. So on that note, that's about it for today's installment. I guess we are done doing talking. Thank you for listening in. Stay tuned to our website, SWNZ.co.nz, for Star Wars news for New Zealanders and another podcast episode this time next week. Jump on over to either our Facebook group or the SWNZ message boards to discuss all the latest Star Wars news, including Bad Batch episodes, with other Kiwi fans. Thank you for listening.
And may the Force be with you. If you enjoyed today's podcast, go ahead and like the video, check out the SWNZ Podcast playlist for our other episodes, and subscribe for alerts about new episodes. See you next time.